I've worked with a lot of different comedians, you know what I mean? From Chris Tucker to Mike Gapps to Tracy Morgan, Tracy Morgan, get well, man.
Actor famously walked away and never looked back. Another man turned down a $12 million payday just to avoid working with him again. One guy attacked him in a 3-hour interview seen by millions, and one beef is still unsettled today. So who did Ice Cube actually have beef with, and who does he still have a score to settle with? Stay with us as we reveal the actors Ice Cube despises. Number 6, Kevin Hart. He helped Ice Cube build a massive movie franchise only to quietly abandon it. And the real story of what happened is fascinating. Kevin first played the character Ben Barber alongside Ice Cube back in 2014. Together, we created an incredible film. I really believe the world is going to love this movie. I think people are going to laugh a lot, and that's exactly what we wanted to do. Plain and simple. And the movie was a huge success, another franchise victory for Ice Cube. Before he did, Ride Along. Kevin Hart was mostly known as a stand-up comic. After that movie, he became a legitimate movie star. Ice Cube created the opportunity, and Kevin Hart seized it. Ride Along 2 came out in 2016 and made over $120 million globally. And right around then, Kevin Hart inked a first-look deal with Universal Pictures and began lining up movies one after another, all while his comedy tours were exploding worldwide. Suddenly, his schedule didn't have any open spaces for a sequel. By that point, Kevin's name was the main draw on the posters for several movies. His stand-up comedy tours were selling out massive arenas all over the world, and he quickly became one of the most sought-after comedians in the entire industry. Ice Cube had even talked publicly about his ideas for a third movie, since the first two proved they had fantastic on-screen chemistry. Ice Cube was publicly discussing ideas for a third installment, and the first two films had already proven the undeniable chemistry between the two stars. By then, Kevin was headlining huge global comedy tours like his What Now tour, selling out arenas on different continents. He had also become one of Hollywood's most reliable and bankable leading men. He was consistently delivering big opening weekends at the box office while juggling stand-up gigs that had his calendar booked solid for years to come. Stand-up that I can tell you personally I've done. That's better than anything I've done recently. And then, Central Intelligence came along and changed the game. He then joined forces with Dwayne Johnson, and their chemistry was an instant hit. This led to Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle in 2017, and then Jumanji: The Next Level in 2019. The two of them just kept making one blockbuster after another. They practically became a brand name together. Meanwhile, Ride Along 3 was completely dead in the water. Ice Cube mentioned it publicly in 2023 on a podcast, saying Kevin actually owed him money. It was just a single dollar from a bet Cube had made predicting Kevin would get closer to The Rock than to him after their first movie. He claimed that Kevin's behavior from the second The Rock came along proved that his prediction in the bet was 100% correct. Cube joked he wanted that dollar paid back in pennies. When Kevin was shown the video clip, he just laughed it off, saying Ice Cube was still one of his best friends in Hollywood. The whole thing seemed like a joke, but Kevin kept making more Jumanji movies, while the Ride Along franchise completely stalled out during that time. To be clear, Kevin never attacked Ice Cube or showed any disrespect. As of early 2026, there was still no production schedule, no contracts had been signed, and no official timeline was ever announced. And while Kevin's packed schedule didn't seem to have any room for it, the door was always open on Ice Cube's side. But whether or not Kevin ever planned to walk back through that door was a question only he could answer. Kevin simply moved on to different projects. This next feud, however, was much more contentious. Number 5 is Faison Love. The Friday movie franchise made Ice Cube an absolute millionaire. But the actor who played Big Worm only walked away with $2,500. Faison Love came on board for Friday in 1995 for what seemed like a tiny role, playing a neighborhood drug dealer who collected his debts with serious menace but delivered his threats with this bizarre and unhinged happy attitude. Faison brought a unique energy to Big Worm that completely elevated every single scene he was in. He opened up saying, "They put me a comedian out there. And one time, I was taking too long, and they were like, 'Hurry up, fatso.'" The movie cost just $2.3 million to make and brought in $27 million. Big Worm became one of the most quotable characters from the entire movie series. He was constantly referenced, imitated, and recognized, even by people who'd never seen the sequels. Faison got his $2,500 and just went home. He didn't say a word about it for more than 20 years in interviews. He always said that getting the exposure was the most important thing, that the movie Friday gave him the launching pad he needed to build his entire career, and that he never did it for the money. But what he never mentioned was the story of what went down when Next Friday was being made. Ice Cube's team eventually came back to Faison and made him an offer to play Big Worm again. The offer was for double his original pay, a total of $5,000. Faison flatly turned it down. The very next morning, he got a call from Warner Brothers offering him $100,000 for a role in The Replacements. He took that deal and never looked back. The Big Worm chapter of the Friday franchise ultimately closed without the one character the audience was most desperate to see make a return. Faison just moved on with his career. Ice Cube simply rebuilt Next Friday around a new set of characters and released it anyway. Both men kept working. The whole topic remained buried for years. Then in December of 2021, Faison gave an interview where the $2,500 figure finally surfaced. And within hours, the entire internet had turned on Ice Cube. The internet saw it very clearly. A man who created a franchise worth over $120 million had paid the actor behind a beloved character less than what most people earn in a week. Ice Cube later responded in public stating that Faison had only worked on the film for 1 or maybe 2 days. He said every actor was paid scale because that's all the budget could cover, and that anyone who felt the pay was too low had been completely free to turn down the part. He didn't offer any apology, but there was one crucial detail he conveniently didn't mention. The jump from $2,500 to $5,000 for a character, the audience had already proven they would absolutely pay to see again. It really didn't seem like Faison was being treated as a priority. He was brought back for the absolute minimum the franchise figured it could get away with paying. Faison posted online within 48 hours, calling Ice Cube his brother, saying he had zero regrets and asking the internet to please just move on. The public fight ended quickly, but the sequel talks the $5,000 offer the rejection, and the $100,000 alternative that showed up the next morning all stayed on the record. And dedicated fans of the series noticed what was happening immediately. The Big Worm character was clearly worth so much more than what he had been paid. The money issue inside the Friday franchise was now officially out in the open, and the next guy was offered $12 million and still said no. Faison walked for $5,000. The next man would go on to reject $12 million, and then he just vanished. Number 4, Chris Tucker. Chris Tucker actually left $10,000 on the table the first day he even walked onto the Friday movie set. He's an amazing stand-up comedian who is performing tomorrow night at the Tennessee Performing Arts Center over in Nashville. Give it up for Chris Tucker. And Ice Cube would then spend the next 30 years just trying to get him to come back. Chris had virtually no film career to speak of when he first joined Friday back in 1995. He had Def Comedy Jam credits and a reputation in stand-up circles as having a wild, unpredictable energy on stage. Despite this, Ice Cube went ahead and cast him as Smokey anyway. And what Chris delivered to the screen was one of the most perfectly timed comic performances of that entire decade. He stole every single scene he was in. Friday completely turned him into a household name. The Fifth Element and Money Talks immediately followed. Then Rush Hour made him one of the highest paid actors in all of Hollywood. He went from making $10,000 to earning $20 million per picture in less than 4 short years. Next Friday arrived in the year 2000, and Smokey was nowhere to be found. Ice Cube's team had offered Chris somewhere between $10 and $12 million to return to the role. But Chris turned the massive offer down flat. You see, his Christian faith had deepened a lot in the years since the first movie, and the content of the Friday franchise, like the marijuana use and the language, And the very specific culture of the original film no longer matched what he was willing to represent in public. Ice Cube's own position was quite clear. The franchise was a success precisely because of what it was, and completely rebuilding it around one actor's newfound beliefs wasn't something he was ever prepared to do. So Chris walked. Ice Cube simply rebuilt the sequel around comedian Mike Epps and released it to theaters anyway. The absence of Smokey was felt from the very first scene, and it never stopped being the number one question in every Friday interview for the next 25 years. Ice Cube actually wrote Smokey into both of the last Friday scripts that he submitted to Warner Brothers. That character was never once cut. It seems every single draft assumed that Chris would eventually agree to come back. Ice Cube held that door open across 9 long years of studio battles. This included 2 completely rejected screenplays and the tragic deaths of both John Witherspoon and Tommy Lister Jr. Both of those men had appeared in the franchise, and both of them Ice Cube publicly said he wanted to give one last Friday before they tragically ran out of time. Chris made some occasional comments about the franchise's creative direction over the years, though it was never a direct confrontation. It was always just something that landed a little bit wrong with the people who were close to Ice Cube, and each time it seemed to push them a little further apart. There was no single moment that could be called the breaking point, just a very slow accumulation of a distance between 2 men who had created something special together and never truly finished it. When Warner Brothers finally came through with a green light under its new leadership in 2024, Mike Epps confirmed publicly in early 2025 that Ice Cube had called him up personally and that his deal was officially done. The call definitely happened. Last Friday was really moving forward, and yet Chris still hadn't committed to returning. As of early 2026, Ice Cube confirmed that no actors had actually signed any contracts. He said the primary goal was to bring back every familiar face the story could possibly hold. Chris still hasn't said yes. 2 decades of distance, a $12 million offer turned down, and 2 different scripts that still kept his iconic character written into the story. In the end, Chris had been the one who boldly walked away from Friday at the absolute height of the franchise's popularity. But he had also been the one whose notable absence had made every single movie that followed feel somewhat incomplete. The only question that really matters about the Friday franchise is whether he'll walk through that door Ice Cube has kept open since 1999. Chris left his door open, but the next major conflict had nothing to do with the door. It involved a studio, a hefty contract, and $9 million. Number 3, we're talking Jack Black and Sony Pictures. $9 million was on the line, and Ice Cube left it there, walking away. The original plan had been totally straightforward. Back in June of 2021, the movie Oh Hell No was announced, putting Ice Cube and Jack Black together for the very first time. Jack played a guy who falls in love with his best friend's mom, and Ice Cube was that friend who was having none of it. Directing was Kitao Sakurai, fresh off his breakout Netflix comedy hit Bad Trip. The plan was to shoot in Hawaii that winter, and that $9 million paycheck for Ice Cube's role had already been confirmed to the public. This was a smart commercial move, with 2 huge stars, a proven director, and a major studio like Sony that could release it the right way. 4 months later, Ice Cube was completely off the film. The issue was that production required every single cast member to be vaccinated for the Hawaii shoot. Ice Cube had been very clear about his stance on the vaccine. He wasn't getting it, period. And no paycheck attached to any project was ever going to change his mind on that. Sony stood firm on the requirement. Ice Cube stood firm on his position. So the production decided to just replace him instead of making an exception. Weeks later, he finally addressed the situation publicly on a podcast. He was careful not to name the movie or Sony, but he clarified a point the media kept getting wrong. He didn't actually turn the role down. The role was taken away from him because he refused the mandate. That $9 million wasn't something he gave up. It was taken by a condition he wouldn't meet. He admitted that at that point, he had no clue what Hollywood really thought about him. And he said it without sounding the least bit concerned about the answer. The project's collapse was much bigger than just one casting change. Once Ice Cube was gone, the production pushed back its start date, and a replacement was never publicly announced. Sony reportedly put Oh Hell No on ice, eventually reworking it with a new title and creative vision, changing both the director and the cast. They got a new script and removed Jack Black from the main part. That left him as just a producer on a movie that looked nothing like the original announcement. I'm Jack Black. Jack Black. I'm not even in the top 3, but anyways, this is an interview for the Minecraft movie. The project that was supposed to be the first pairing of Ice Cube and Jack Black just completely vanished. The movie never recovered, and neither did the partnership that it was built on. This was actually Ice Cube's second movie exit around the same time. He also dropped out of Flint Strong, a boxing drama from Moonlight's Barry Jenkins, for reasons that never really went public. 2 films gone in just 2 months. And you can bet the industry noticed that. Jack Black never said a bad word about Ice Cube. There was no personal fight between them. No one was fighting over credit or bad behavior, and it never blew up into some kind of beef that had to be settled. The real enemy in this whole story was institutional. It was a studio that made a rule you couldn't break and then enforced it when he didn't comply. Ice Cube has spent his entire career fighting against institutional walls and obstruction. From NWA getting banned on the radio to Warner Brothers shelving. Last Friday for a decade to labels and studios always underestimating what he was building. This was just the same story, different day. The studio had its rule, and he had his line. The line won. $9 million and 0 regrets on record. The project died, and Sony took that money from him. The next conflict wasn't about his paycheck. This one went straight for his legacy. Number 2 is Cat Williams. Cat Williams had one foot inside the Friday franchise, and he used that foot to kick Ice Cube square in the face. Back in 2002, Cat joined Friday After Next without any real movie credits to his name. His stand-up rep was strong in specific circles, but nationally he was basically unknown. He played the role of Money Mike, a tiny fast-talking pimp who gets robbed by a guy in a Santa suit and spends the entire movie trying to get his dignity back. It was just a supporting role in a cheap sequel, but Cat turned it into his big national debut. Money Mike was a total hit. The character ended up becoming one of the most quoted figures in the whole franchise. And Cat Williams walked away from that movie with the kind of mainstream fame that kicked off his entire career. It led to his own comedy specials, lots of television work, the movie Norbit, and a career that made him one of the most talked about comedians for the next 20 years. Ice Cube also gave Chris Tucker his first major film role. Then in January of 2024, Cat sat down for an interview on Club Shay Shay that went on for over 3 hours and became a massive viral moment for the year. He made some very specific claims about his time on Friday After Next, and they landed right at Ice Cube's feet. Cat claimed he filmed a scene that was hands down the funniest part of the entire movie, but said Ice Cube ordered it cut from the film. The reason it supposedly made Cube look weak by comparison on a movie he was producing. The accusation was that Ice Cube had deliberately removed the best comedy from his own movie just to protect his status as the main star. Ice Cube didn't wait long, posting a video response within days. He stated that the hilarious scene Cat described simply did not exist, and that no footage of that quality was ever cut because he would have had absolutely no reason to remove it. He explained his filmmaking philosophy had never been about cutting material that actually worked, and that if the scene was truly as funny as Cat Williams claimed it, absolutely would have been in the movie. Then he said something that really couldn't be ignored. He accused Cat of being ungrateful, claiming he had given Cat his very first mainstream platform, and that Cat had never once bothered to return the favor. He claimed he had put many people in films throughout his career, and yet not one of them had ever offered him a role in return. He admitted Cat was talented, but didn't soften his critique. Cat refused to retract the claim. Cat had also made much broader claims during that same interview, targeting the entire Friday franchise as a whole. He was suggesting that Ice Cube's total creative control over the films was built on the backs of other contributors who never got the recognition they truly deserved. The Friday audience, which overlapped heavily with Cat's own fan base, was completely split. For weeks, the comment sections on both of their social media platforms exploded. The argument over who was lying was still driving engagement months later. Friday started out as just a $3.5 million movie that the studio fully expected to be a flop. Ice Cube was the one who wrote it. He also produced it, starred in it, and then spent the next 30 years defending it from people trying to turn it into something it wasn't. Cat Williams had been given a role in that same franchise, and he used the spotlight it provided to openly question if the man who created it all deserved his credit. As of early 2026, neither man had publicly addressed the other since Cat attacked the franchise. The next betrayal, however, started long before the franchise even existed. Number one, Eazy-E and Dr. Dre. Long before the movies, before any franchises, and before Hollywood even knew who Ice Cube was, there was NWA. And two men who helped build it also almost destroyed him. Ice Cube grew up in the very same Compton neighborhood as Eric Wright and Andre Young. With DJ Yella and MC Ren, they formed NWA in the mid-1980s and created something the music industry couldn't handle. The FBI sent an official warning letter to their label right after the release of F the Police, and radio stations simply refused to play their records. But the group just got bigger anyway. Ice Cube was at the very heart of it as the main writer penning the majority of Eazy-E's hugely successful debut solo album, Easy Does It. He also had co-writing credits on other Ruthless Records albums that went double platinum, yet his name never appeared on a single royalty check for any of them. He was still living at his parents' house, while Jerry Heller and Eazy were living in huge mansions and driving fancy cars. When Ice Cube raised the obvious financial discrepancy, Eazy actually sided with Jerry. Suddenly, the question of where all the money went was twisted into a question about Ice Cube's loyalty to his own group. He left NWA at the end of 1989 with no label deal and no certain income. What came next was No Vaseline. The track named Heller directly and went after each NWA member individually. It detailed the financial setup with so much specific proof that the claims couldn't be dismissed as just angry exaggeration. NWA never recorded a formal response. Dre left the very next year echoing the same financial grievances, and then he co-founded Death Row Records. The group officially dissolved. Afterward, they went in completely different directions. Dre's 1992 album, The Chronic, completely redefined hip-hop production. Ice Cube was busy building his solo catalog and transitioning into film. From Ruthless Records, Eazy released diss tracks targeting both of them. The entire audience watched it unfold and very publicly kept score. By the middle of the 1990s, something had changed between Ice Cube and Eazy. The two of them had actually started talking again, not in public, but in private meetings that Ice Cube would later describe as serious conversations about working together in the studio again. They were slowly starting to fix things. Both of them had acknowledged enough of the past drama to begin moving forward towards something new. Then Eazy publicly announced his HIV diagnosis on March 16, 1995. He passed away just 10 days later. He was only 30 years old. Ice Cube arrived at the hospital just as Dre was leaving. Dre said Eazy was unconscious, so Ice Cube decided to leave as well. He asked Dre to call him when Eazy woke up, then he went home and waited. The call did come, but Eazy was already gone. The conversation they had been slowly building toward never happened. And rebuilding things with Dre would take its own sweet time. When they finally reconnected in the mid-1990s to record Natural Born Killaz, Dre reached out completely unexpectedly after years of not speaking. Ice Cube later said that when he walked into that studio, it felt like absolutely no time had passed between them. They didn't talk about the past. They just made the record. The Straight Outta Compton biopic in 2015 essentially forced them to confront the empire, they built the bridges they burned, and what they had patched up over 25 years. They actually produced the movie together. Then in January 2021, Dre was rushed to the hospital with a brain aneurysm. Ice Cube posted that very same day, asking everyone to send love and prayers to his brother. Then in February 2024, NWA received a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. But Dre just sent a text saying he was at his daughter's birthday. So Ice Cube told the entire audience that Dre was a billionaire with other places to be announcing, "My man Dr. Dre is not here." He wanted to make it clear to everyone, we want you to know we're not hating. And then he stated that every single Ricard NWA ever made every room they ever entered because of their music all started with Eazy's vision. Cube said Eazy made it all possible. The man who never got to say goodbye at the hospital was the last one left to say it all. So did Eazy and Ice Cube ever really fix what tore them apart? Or did huge success just make it easier to sweep the damage under the rug? And with Smokey still not confirmed for that last Friday film, is that really just a scheduling issue? Or is that famous friendship already quietly finished? Let us know what you think down in the comments. And remember to like, share, and subscribe for more updates. Also, click on the next video showing on your screen right now. You are definitely going to enjoy it.